Senator Seliger this morning. He was going to sponsor it. So since I was in town, I was going to visit with him. He's the author of the bill. I also went and visited with the Senate Education Committee bonfire and visited with them, shared my concerns. I have some very big concerns about taking the authority away from the State Board of Education over the TEKS and the textbooks. The board provides a really great bill. It's been a positive results from the State Board of Education. Without the State Board of Education, we would have phonics books that didn't have phonics. It was the State Board that said on. We have standalone spelling books that probably wouldn't have happened. But I think one of the best examples is one of the most controversial things we've done since I've been chairman is the English Language Arts and Reading TEKS. In that process, we have ended up with some really good some good TEKS, in my opinion. One of the things that you have in education is a debate over different approaches, educational approaches. There's, some people call it traditional versus progressive. Some call it content versus process. And what happens with the State Board of Education, where you get input and bring those people, advocates of both approaches, are able to come and visit with us on the board. And the board then will make a decision. Without a state board to facilitate that process, then whatever group is dominated in at the TEA or the commissioner in the department would happen. You wouldn't get all this good input. For instance, in this battle versus content and process, evidently right now Massachusetts has very, very high quality standards, but their commissioner of education is wanting to go to some 21st century skills and wants to go away from their content-oriented philosophy to more of a process and to start watering down. It was highlighted in an editorial in the Boston Globe just in February 19th. In that editorial, the Boston Globe pointed out that at the time, 10 years ago, Connecticut had better academic performance than Massachusetts. But in the meantime, Massachusetts has instituted this content-based approach. Now, Connecticut, at that same time, Connecticut took the opposite approach. They went for process-oriented skills. Well, now, Connecticut scores have plummeted. The scores in Massachusetts were just skyrocketing, especially amongst disadvantaged. And so, in Connecticut now wants to go back to the content, and now you have Massachusetts go through the process. But instead of having those swings and going back and forth, we were able to get what I would call the content-oriented. To me, according to Dr. Jean Shaw, she's one of the leading educational researchers that passed away in the early, 4, 5, 6 years ago. In her last book, The Academic Achievement Challenge, she looks at the research and she says it's clear beyond a doubt that the teacher-centered approach is the best approach, and especially for the disadvantaged children. And so basically, that's really what we got. We had that debate on the State Board of Education. I believe we have much better standards. Had it been left to just the TEA, our present TEKS, bottom line, were very repetitive that we had in English. This is what was done in 1997. And it was we did the best we could at the time, but I think a lot of us can learn about state standards. Texas at the beginning, at the leading edge of all these state standards movements. And a lot have been learned, but for instance, the 7th grade TEKS that are currently in the schools today and the 8th grade TEKS, there's only 3 words difference between what's expected in the 7th grade and 8th grade. They're exactly the same. You get to 9th grade, you've got like 90 brand new ones. And it's, the feedback I'm getting from the new standards is for having a teacher or being trained in the new standards is that the teachers love it. They really appreciate this. This is so much more exciting. They build from grade level to grade level. They have content. But go back to the initial attempt that the board made to rewrite these previous TEKS. The only changes made were a refinement. They changed like to know it, I forgot the exact words, to know and identify the alphabet, and for kindergarten, to identify and know the alphabet. Or did they just switch minor changes? There was no major change. The impetus for change came from the board members. And I kind of see it the same way with the college readiness standards. Where did that impetus come from? It didn't come from the bureaucracy or the establishment. It came from the Senate and from the legislature. And I think that's why it's really vital State Board of Education role, especially in the text. Now, in the textbooks, it's the same thing. We get so much public input when we adopt books. So we are a mechanism that allows the public, our parents, the teachers, the community leaders, business leaders to come and present their needs about the vital issues affecting the education of their children. And I just can't see taking that away. We have much better textbooks because of the process that we go through in the State Board of Education. I've heard stories of Senator Nelson getting the heiress out of the books. I've heard, and I see it still, it's that same way that the legislature knows that we need to, the publishers know that they need to have their textbooks approved by the State Board of Education. And I think they do a much more diligent job than if we just left it more to the bureaucrats. It's just, so I really think it's really an excellent job. The process keeps getting better and better to review the books. And frankly, there was a controversial, we rejected a book, May, about a math book back in November of 2007, about 2007. And it's pretty controversial, you may hear about it. It was an everyday math book. It was a fourth grade book, a third grade. Well, the Texas Essential Knowledge and Skills for Math in third grade require our students to know the multiplication tables to the 12 by 12s. This book, Everyday Math, in the teacher edition, where it describes the goal of the book, it said was for the students to know their times tables to the tens, and they're supposed to only know the zeros, the ones, the twos, the fives, and the tens. So, if you know football fan, you get that 15, 20, 25, 30, it's at the 40. You can know that, but there was no goal in that book for 3 times 4. It was, they wanted to know called metistion times zeros, times ones, and twos, the fives, and the tens.